Hello everyone, this is Scott Jorgens from Endeavor Solutions. Today is our 11th Training Tuesday and today's topic is on PSTL tools for Dynamics GP. On the line with me is Brittany Propinensky, who is going to be our host today to talk about PSTL. Brittany, over to you.
Hi, thanks. So as, if any of you don't know me, as Scott said, my name is Brittany Propinensky. I am the support manager here at Endeavor, and I am your host for today. This is actually one of my favorite topics is PSTL. I'll be honest, I'm quite excited about this one. So PSTL, I'm going to give you a little bit of a history of PSTL. So any of you who have had GP for a long time might know that PSTL used to be a tool you actually had to purchase prior to 2013. And then in 2013, Microsoft decided to include PSTL with all the installs at GP, which is actually fabulous because there is about 37 tools inside of PSTL. We're actually going to cover 10 of them today. But I do encourage, there is a full PDF of the full listing on our website as well, and it spans anywhere from system tools to AP, AR, inventory, payroll, and there's some fun miscellaneous ones in there as well that typically kind of touch your system setup, okay? These are, as amazing as I think they are dangerous tools, okay? Make sure that you are having backups and good stuff like that when you are using them, but they can definitely do some amazing, amazing things, okay? So on that note, of course, Scott will also send out where you can find the full listing of it. On that note, I'm going to flip into GP because, of course, GP is my favorite place to be, okay? I'm just going to confirm, Scott, you can see GP, right?
Yes, we can.
Beautiful. So if you guys have attended any of my other ones, you'll know that I like to talk about payables. Today we're going to talk a little bit about everything. We're going to talk about system and receivables and payables, a little bit of item, and so on and so on. So we're actually going to, if you haven't seen PSTL before, it's this little gear that kind of hides in the bottom left. If you don't see it, you might have to go to the show more buttons. PSTL, as I said, is included, but it may not be in all of your installs. It may actually only be installed on your SQL Server or maybe some of your admin rights. If you don't have it installed, don't worry. It's a very, very easy install to do, okay? And of course, you own it and you have that in your media as well, okay? So I'm just going to pop into PSTL here and kind of show you what it looks like. It only has one main bar here when you get into PSTL. It's not the most fun screen, but it has so many fun products here. You'll notice it kind of separates it out into system, financial, purchasing, sales, so on and so on. The first one I actually want to talk about today is the shortcuts copy. Okay, you might say to me, why on earth do I want to use this? If you have a user that may be leaving and you have another user taking over, or maybe a user is moving out of that position and somebody else is taking it over, you can actually copy all of their shortcuts that they see in their home page here, or in other various areas if they've got their shortcuts hiding up in here or in their to-do list. This shortcut copy will actually copy it from one user to another. It literally just wants to know what user do you want to copy it from and what user do you want it to go to, okay? So that's a nice, easy way for, especially to have that smooth transition if you kind of have one person shadowing another and they're teaching them the shortcuts that they use. You can copy those shortcuts from one user to the other, which I find is very nice and easy when you're creating that new user, okay? Especially because somebody might have created a shortcut 5 years ago and they may not remember how they did that shortcut, so you can just copy it from one to the other, okay? Here's one of my biggest pet peeves about GP is at midnight when you're working, it really likes to remind you that it's midnight and the little pop-up comes up and says, do you want to change your system user date to the next date? I always angrily say no because I'm like, yes, I know I'm working past midnight, but you have this update user date. And if you turn this on, it means that that pop-up that comes at midnight won't actually show up for you guys anymore. It might also be if you left your GP on overnight, maybe you're not working through the night and, you know, you actually sleep at midnight. You can actually, it kind of comes up and it'll keep your screen stuck, and then you might end up shutting down GP because you get frustrated with this. You can shut off that update user date from inside of PSTL. Okay. But if you liked it in there, you can always keep it on there as well. Now, for those of you who have multiple databases, okay, so we all kind of know that creating a new vendor, there's a lot of a process that goes with it, right? We have to do the credit check on the vendor and make sure they're actually, you know, going to give us everything we need, and we have to set up that vendor inside of GP and our cards, and we have to assign their accounts and make sure they have all their information. Okay, so if you have multiple databases, you might have to do this process 2 or 5 times, or however many times you do it for each database. There's actually a really nice trick inside of PSTL. Okay, so it will automatically, once you create it in one company, will trigger it to make it in another company. So you'll see that you actually have this in your payables and your receivables. It's called PM and RM master triggers. So anytime you create a customer or a vendor, it will actually say, okay, you know what, you create it in Fabricam. I also want you to create it in Brittany Co. and Scott Co. as well. It's not an all or nothing situation. You can have 2 companies follow each other and then none of the rest of them, or 6 companies follow each other and none of the rest of them, or company A goes to company B, but company C copies to company D, so on and so on. You can mix and mingle as you please with RM and PM master triggers. It's a really interesting trick to kind of reduce that work if you're using multiple databases and having to copy those vendors back and forth. It also helps us out with a little bit of that human error. Now, I like to think that I'm perfect and I never make mistakes. Just don't ask my husband that question. He will tell you otherwise. Is that it will kind of get us away from you know, those data entry errors we might have. Maybe we put an I before an E except for on the name, or some of those silly rules that happen. Okay, so we definitely can, you know, avoid some of that human error when you're entering it 2 or 3 times to have that customer and vendor repeating itself. Okay, all right. I know. I said I wouldn't talk too much about payables, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about payables. Okay, so purchase order entry. Sometimes you might wonder, you know what, I put this purchase order in, where does my cost default from when I actually put in that line? That's a great question. We can actually tell it where we want the unit cost to come up from inside of PSTL. Okay, so you have a couple different options inside of here, so I'm just going to hop back into that PSTL window. Okay, so you have this pop cost defaulter. Okay, and when you open it up, it's going to ask you whether or not you want the PO to default from the current cost or the standard cost. Now, I'm going to kind of show you what both of those costs are and what they do. So I'm just going to hop into an item card here, and I'm going to pick on my XLG phone because it's my favorite product here. And I'm going to put them side by side, okay, just so we can kind of see what's going on. Oops. So if you choose to have your default cost from your PO on your purchase order, so this cost that's going to pop up here, if you choose it to be your current cost, that's this line here in your item card. Now, you might say to me, I see this current cost changing all the time. Where does it come from? How on earth does GP be a psychic and know what the current cost is? I'm going to tell you, GP is not a psychic. Current cost actually comes from the last time it had a positive adjustment. So those positive adjustments come from things like an inventory adjustment that you put positive quantities in, or a purchase order that you received. Okay, so whatever the last cost you received it at is going to be your current cost. Okay, now you notice that you had another option here, which was also standard cost. Your standard cost, of course, comes from your standard cost window or field inside of your item maintenance window, and you set that cost. I can set this to be $60,000. Okay, and then you can choose it to be whatever you on the cost defaulter. Okay, so if you're having a little bit of frustration with what the cost that automatically defaults from your purchase order, take a peek what you might have this one set to. Okay, now as I promised, I said I wouldn't pick on payables too much. I'm actually going to hop into sales here. So if you're using SOP or sales order entry or sales order processing, yes, I realize SOP and POP sounds like a bad Dr. Seuss book. If you're using this SOP and POP, what you might have is you might actually want to see what this customer has purchased before. So let's just set up a new invoice here. When you create this invoice, you might want to know how often Aaron Fitz has actually purchased anything. Okay, so if I pick on that 100 XLG phone again, you'll notice a fun trick that if I go to my additional here, I have what we call historical lookup. Now, if you don't see your historical lookup under your additional window, it might be that you don't have it turned on in PSTL. So what this actually can do for you is your customer lookup. So it's going to look up by this item number every time this customer has bought it, when they bought it, how much they bought it, and how much was it. So this can kind of help you out if you have a customer on the phone or they're standing in front of you and they're saying like, oh, I bought this before and I bought it for $5 less. You might be looking at them going, I don't think so. But you can now for sure validate what you're feeling there and say, you know what, I see that you bought it, you know, September 1st last year and you paid $27 for it or whatever the case may be. Okay, so you can actually access it from the header here in your additional historical lookup, or if you're actually inside the sales detail item entry window, which how you get here is if you highlight the line, oops, sorry, and actually hit that blue expansion arrow, you can get in here as well. You'll see it under your additional, so you'll see the historical lookup. It actually shows you the same window. Voila, and you can see what they have. You can also type any number you want inside of here. If you have another item, you can type it in and find it inside of there as well. Okay. Now you can also have your different sort options in here. Last time they bought it by document date, item description, so on and so on. You can have that inside of there as well. Okay. So I'm just going to show you where you can see that inside your PSTL. Oops. You know what helps when you close all your windows. All right. So it's actually in your PSTL window here. Oops. Under your SOP customer item look at. If it has a check mark next to it, you'll know that it's currently running. If you don't have a check mark, it's not running. And of course, if you actually can't get to that historical lookup window from inside your SOP entry window, that's also going to be inside of there as well. Okay. Now, here's one of the fun things as well, is you'll also notice that sometimes for your receivables transactions, you'll know that they don't move to the opener history the same way that payables does. We know that in payables, as soon as that invoice hits 0 on applied amount, it gets moved to a status history. However, in sales, it doesn't do it the same way. It'll stay open till we run a routine called paid transaction removal. And it moves it to history. Of course, it only moves it to history if it's fully applied, and so on and so on. Well, sometimes it happens that it's fully applied and we're going, oh no, customer actually came back to us and said they paid us for the wrong thing. Now we need to unapply it. Okay. We have, and if you'll notice, if you try and void it out inside of sales, it'll tell you no. If you try to unapply it, it tells you no. You might go in a fun circle until you get frustrated. I know I have a few times. There's this RM transaction unapply. And what it allows you to do is actually go to any of the documents that might be in history. You can see all those invoices, and if they have a check mark next to them, they're applied. If you uncheck them, they'll become unapplied and move to a status open, which will allow you to reapply those invoices as you go. You might also notice if you can actually use this tool a little bit for its unintended purpose, but it's a great tool for this one. If you were doing a cash receipt that kind of, you know, went round and round in circles, you took it in batch recovery, you took it out of batch recovery, and you still can't apply invoice 1024 because it says it's fully applied. And when you go into that window, it says there's no cash receipt actually applied to it. If you unapply it from this window, it'll actually do its own cleaning method inside of GP as well. So this tool actually has a double purpose for us. One, helps us out when we need to actually unapply those transactions that moved to history that we didn't want to move to history. And two is if we have like a ghost apply, you can always use this as your first go-to to try and get those applies undone. Of course, if they're still stuck and you can't get those ghost applies out of in sales, please feel free to open a support ticket with us. We see that one, I don't want to say frequently, but we have seen it a few times in our career. We can help you out with that one as well. Okay. Now, I've talked about sales a few times here. Is the tool I actually want to talk about is sales is actually under miscellaneous, and it actually affects both sales and purchasing, but it's a really handy tool. It's actually called a doc date verify. You'll notice that I actually have it checked off here, and you go, what does that mean to me? Well, here's the thing. If you're ever putting in an invoice or any kind of transaction, actually, doesn't have to be an invoice of any sorts, is you're kind of right around as month's closing, and you don't know that the month is closed or not, and you'd rather just tell you right as you're entering that transaction in, not when you go to post it and it gives you an error message and you have to go through that, is you can actually turn on this doc date verify. And what that allows you to do is that as soon as you put in a date that's in a fiscal period that's closed or fiscal year that's closed, okay, it actually tells you right up in your face, it says that fiscal period is containing a date that is closed. So it's literally telling you it's closed, please go open me or pick a different date, whatever the case may be. When you turn on that doc date verify, it does work inside of receivables, payables, inventory. Essentially, anytime you put a posting date in, that's going to be the wrong date. Okay? Find that one's very helpful. It does work inside of POP, receivables, as I said, pretty much anywhere that takes a date. So this can help us out doing our day-to-day entries, especially around those month ends and period ends. Or sometimes we just forget what year it is. I have troubles with that. Sometimes we move to 2020 and I'm still going in 2019. Maybe I just don't want to admit I'm getting a year older. I haven't figured that out yet. But don't tell me it's because I'm getting a year older. I'd like to live in my own world a little bit for that one. Okay. So let's kind of move to items here. Okay. So our items kind of touch both sales and purchasing, but sometimes our items, as we know it, change names, you know, whether that's coming from the vendor or we're trying to clean up our item numbers to kind of be all in line or whatever cleanup you're attempting to do. And instead of just kind of, as we know, we can't delete a master record if it has any history against it. Okay, GP will try and tell me right now that I can't, there's a document that exists so it can't be deleted. What do you say to me? I don't want to double my item list because I want to clean them up. That's totally fine. We actually have what we call the item number modifier, which allows us to change the name. Okay, so we can actually change our item number from a processor to be Brittany. Okay, and you can convert it. You can also import these en masse. What it actually is a text file, and you can import those in from a text file as well and convert them. Okay, it actually changes everything in its history. So every time it's been on a sales order, a purchasing order, an inventory transaction, you name it, it changes everywhere in the system that it sees this name to be Brittany or whatever name you choose it to. Though I'd be honored if you named it Brittany. In this case, you actually retain all of its history and all of its integrity. Okay, so you don't have to try and, you know, quantity it out and quantity it back in because everything is maintained the way it was. You get to keep it the way it was as well. Now, this is one of those ones that I said is super powerful. Before you do this, please ensure you have no one in the system, a full backup of the system just in case something goes wrong. Murphy's Law says if you do a backup, it probably won't go wrong, so please take a backup. Okay. If you've never done a backup before, please let us know. We can help you out with that as well. Typically, your internal IT can also help you with doing your backups as well. Okay. So you can actually do those item maintenance, item modifiers as well. You might say to me, you know what, I would love to do that for customers or vendors. 100% you can do them inside PSTL as well. You'll notice you have customer name modifier and vendor name modifier as well. If you're using one of the latest and greatest versions of GP, you'll notice that they actually moved that utility outside of PSTL as well. You'll see that you have vendor combiner and modifier, okay? That's the one part I didn't talk about is actually inside the item is you actually have an item combiner as well. So if you had accidentally created two items that were the same and now you actually want them to come together, they can. However, in this marriage, when you combine them, there's no divorce. It is forever and ever, amen. You cannot uncombine them once you combine them. That goes the same for vendors and customers as well. Once they're combined, they're combined. There's no separating them, which is also why I'm going to reiterate here. Please do take a backup before you do these, just in case you might need one. For sure, have it inside of there. Okay. All right. One of the last tools I actually wanted to touch on is there is a company copy tool. For any of you that might be creating an extra test database, or not a test database, but creating another company that's very similar to the one you might have, let's say maybe it's a subsidiary company or whatever the case may be, you actually have this company copy tool, and it can copy some modules, all modules, just your setup, you name it. So you essentially say what company you want to copy from and to, and you can say I want to copy the company setup, financial, payroll, payables, you name it, all or some. You pick and choose as you want to go. You'll also notice that you have this data and reporting options. The data means it'll actually pick up those vendors and customers and master records. These report options are all these fun options that you actually create over here when you create your report options. And you might create them specifically for your month ends or particular users or whatever your case may be. It will copy these as well. Okay, so it is a powerful tool in there. You can copy lots. Oops. Now I have too many things open. You can copy one from one company to another. Okay. It will do a one-time copy only. It's not like our RM and PM master triggers where it does it every time you create one. This is a one-time we do this, okay? Again, as I said, for sure have a backup when you do these things, okay? So that you have them inside of there. Now, you will notice that there is quite a few tools still left inside of here that we didn't touch today. And some of those actually have some very powerful tricks, okay? So a lot of them are actually inside of your system one here. And some of these system tools do some table rebuilds and stuff like that that don't go in there unless you for sure know what you're doing, all right? But definitely take a look into the other ones that are inside of there. Now, I know we have 5 minutes left, and Scott tells me if I go over time. So I will like to open it up to the floor to see if there's any questions out there on the floor, and I'm going to ask that Scott actually helps me with the questions as well. Of course, we will be posting all 37 of them on our website as well, which Scott will send out to everyone as well. And I'm going to let Scott take over for a second here so that we can help answer any questions on the floor.
Sure. There is a questions pane within GoToWebinar, and you can feel free to type them in. I don't see any right now, Brittany, but I'm sure they're on their way.
If not, you can always email me after if they come to you as you're driving home or in the shower.
Oh, question came in. Does the company copy tool, copying from a main company to a test, require that the earlier copy of the test be deleted first?
Okay, so there's actually kind of two things in here. Is if you're using, if you want a direct copy of what your live company is sitting at right now, you would actually take a database backup and refresh that into your test company. However, if you're setting up a new company and you want to use that company copy tool to copy things like vendors or setup or payables, all sorts of things, you can use this company copy tool. It's really to help ease that transition if you are setting up, if you bought a new acquisition or maybe setting up a new company. But that standard refresh of test, we typically take a backup of what your live company is right now and put it into your test company so that you have all those transactions if you're looking to test those transactions or whatever you're looking to test inside that test company. So to answer your question, no, but definitely use that company copy tool if you're creating new databases or maybe acquiring and having to create new companies. So hopefully that answers your question.
Sounds good to me. From the screen, it looked like the company copy tool lets you pick and choose what you want to copy rather than just a whole image of your entire database.
Correct.
Oh, and I got a thank you back. So yes, you did answer the question.
Perfect.
That was great, Brittany. Thank you so much. For those that are new to Endeavor, we're now into our 30th year working with Microsoft Dynamics, ERP, CRM, and cloud solutions. Those on the line are obviously interested in GP. We also work with Business Central and Nav, as well as the CRM products, Office 365, and all of the cloud components to surround GP with the cloud. For those who want to reach out for more information, either reply to this webinar invite or reach out to Trish, James, or Steve, and all of the team at Endeavor is happy to support you the best we can. Any final remarks, Brittany?
No, thanks for having me, and thanks for having me for another Tuesday. It's been, I'm really enjoying these Tuesdays.
Have a great day, everyone. Thanks very much.
Thanks.